We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Daled Amud Aleph in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 94a. On the previous summit, the Mishnah had a machlokes tanoim with regards to what kinds of begadim, if blood from the chatas gets on those begadim, that there's a requirement to wash the beged. According to Rabbi Yehuda, any garment that is ro'oi l'kabel tumah, that is fit to be makabel tumah, for example, or mishahufshat, if you have hide from the time that it's flayed, so that is considered a garment which, if the dam gets on that garment, it has to be washed. Rabbi Lazar says, or mishahufshat, if blood gets on that garment, so then it does not need to be washed, and the reason is because even though it's roy l'kabel tumah, actually yet makabel tumah, it has to be fully makabel tumah, according to Rabbi Lazar. And the Gemara is in the middle of bringing a brisa that elaborates upon the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Lazar, and the brisa now is in the middle of Rabbi Lazar. V'chol mine begadim, again it says beged, I only know a beged, how do I know all types of garments? Talmud lomar, the pasuk says, asher oleh techabes, it says asher oleh techabes, and so we learn from that pasuk, the full pasuk is, v'asher yiza midom al ha-beged asher yiza oleh techabes b'malkum kadosh, and so therefore that is an inclusion, and that includes all kinds of begadim. Yachol shani marba or mishahufshat, now Rabbi Lazar says, I might think we even include or mishahufshat, we even include the hide from when it's flayed. Talmud lomar beged, the pasuk says beged, ma beged davar ha-makabel tumah, just like a beged has to be something that is makabel tumah, I've called davar ha-makabel tumah, so too it has to be something which is makabel tumah. Rashi explains, ma beged ha-makabel tumah, the Rabbi Lazar gamar beged dehacha, Rabbi Lazar learns the word beged over here, mi beged ha-amor b'shrotzim, from the word beged that's written by shrotzim, shu makabel tumah, it's talking about being makabel tumah, ve'ena mechusar machshav, it's not even missing in terms of intention, it's fully meant to be used as a beged, and therefore it's makabel tumah, and so therefore again it has to be over here a davar ha-makabel tumah, according to Rabbi Lazar. And the Gemara continues, my beinayu, what is the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Lazar? Rashi explains, my beinayu b'mai pligi, what are they arguing about? Meaning, hechon matzinu beged haroi l'kabel tumah ve'ena makabel v'yolef Rabbi Yehuda minay. In other words, where do we find such a beged which is fit to be makabel tumah but isn't actually makabel tumah? That's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is sufficient, but Rabbi Lazar says it is not sufficient. And the Gemara continues and says, Amar Abaya says, Matzalis pechusam yisholosh ika beinayu. The difference between them is if you have a fabric that's less than 3 etzbos, that's the difference between the two opinions. Manda Amar Roy Hanami Roy, the one who says that it has to be fit to be makabel tumah, this is also fit to be makabel tumah. The boy chashav aleh, because if the person wants, he is able to have intention to use it. And Manda Amar Davar HaMakabel tumah, the one who says it has to actually be makabel tumah, Hamiyalav Bas Kibule tumah. Here, this item over here is not actually makabel tumah. Rashi explains the boy chashav aleh l'saken chiluka. You can use this piece of fabric, this piece of cloth, to fix his garment, and so therefore that's enough, again, according to Rabbi Yehuda, but it is not enough according to Rabbi Lazar. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar Rava says, Beged shechishav aleh latsura ika beinayu. The difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Lazar is, let's say one has a garment and there's an intention, latsura, to put some kind of image or design on that garment. Manda Amar Roy, the one who says it just has to be fit to be makabel tumah. Hanami Roy, this is fit to be makabel tumah. This is also fit to iboy mavtil leila machshavti, because if he wants to, he can nullify his intention. He can decide that he doesn't want to put on the image, and then it would immediately be makabel tumah. And Manda Amar Davar HaMakabel tumah, the one who says it has to be something that actually is makabel tumah, hashtamiya lav bas kibule tumah. He right now it's not able to be makabel tumah because there's still one more step. The intention to put on a design means that that design has to be there in order for it to be complete, in order for it to be makabel tumah. And Rashi explains, Rava Amar Rava says, Beged Gadol Nami Mashkachas La, by a large garment. Also, we can find an area where they argue, Deroy Lakabel Veino Makabel. You can find a case where it's fit to be Makabel Tumah, but it's not actually Makabel Tumah. Kegon Shechishav Alav Letzairo B'maisei Rokem, Techol Kamen Delot Zairo Mevatla Machshavto Lav Klio. Again, the case is he wants to put some kind of image, stitch some kind of image. So in such a situation, if he's not going to do that, it's not going to be complete. It won't actually be Makabel Tumah. But on the other hand, Boy Mevatla, but he could just disqualify, he could nullify his intention. When we say that one intention can't take away from another, that's talking about taking it away from the law of Tumah. We learned that in the Mishnah, we say that once it's able to be makabel Tumah through intention, so then you can't have a machshava undo that. But when it comes to allowing it to be makabel makabel tuma. Kaimelon kol hakelim yordin lidei tumasan b'machshava. We have established that all kelim can become able to be makabel tuma through machshava, through intention, and that can still happen over here if he just simply changes his mind. He decides not to put on a design, so then it will immediately be makabel tuma. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar, Rava says, and some change this to Ravina Amar. Ravina says, Utzva dechoshav alo lekatzo ika beinahi, an unfinished hide that the person had intention to trim it. That's the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar. Manda Amar Roy, the one who says it just needs to be fit to be makabel tuma. Hanami Ru'uya, this also is fit to be makabel tuma. Manda Amar Davar ha-makabel tuma, the one who says it has to be something that actually is makabel tuma. Halav makabel tuma ad mekatzola. This will not be makabel tuma until he actually trims it. V'atanyan, we learned in a brisa that supports this. Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe says, Utzva shachishav alo lekatza. If an utzva, the person has intention to trim it, tahora, it is pure. Ad shiyaksiyeno, until he actually trims it. And Rashi explains, Utzva shtiach lechol olav o l'shachev olav, and utzva, it's used either to eat upon it or to lie upon it. V'ruban min ha'or, the majority are made out of hide. V'yesha osin min ha'beged, some are made out of beged. V'kaimel and shemchishav olav l'utzva, the halach is that if the person has intention to use it as an utzva, ein tzarech kitzua, it doesn't actually have to be trimmed, liyafoso, to make it look nice, devalav kitzua chazi l'utzva, even without trimming it, it's still fit for this purpose. B'Bava Kama, ma'isi la b'perek meruba, this is brought in Bava Kama in perek meruba. However, if the person had intention to trim it, so then it's not going to be mekabelas tuma until he actually trims it, like we'll say later on. Oh, yevatal machshavta, or he can nullify his intention, decide that he doesn't want to trim it. Hilkach, therefore, beged she'omed l'utzva, if you have a garment that is ready to be for utzva, again for this purpose, either to lay upon it or to eat upon it, v'chishav aleh l'kotza, and he had intention to trim it. Harei roy l'kabel tuma, so it is fit to be mekabel tuma. Di boy mevatal l'machshavta, because if he wants to, he can nullify that intention. However, ve'eno mekabel adayin, but it's still right now, it's not actually mekabel tuma. Uvaha pligi, and that's the machlokas. Rabbi Yehuda called beged b'mashma. According to Rabbi Yehuda, any beged is part of this halacha. V'yesh beged she'eno makabel tuma elo roy l'tuma. Something can be a beged even if it's not actually makabel tuma, but it's fit for tuma. For Rabbi Elazar, kebeged ha'amur b'shrotzim ba'in. And Rabbi Elazar says no, it has to be like the beged that is said by shrotzim. It has to be actually makabel tuma. And Rashi continues, V'atanya b'nichusa, again the brisa is being brought as a support. Ad she'ikse'ena, if the person has intention to trim it, he actually has to trim it for it to be makabel tuma. Oh, yevatal machshavtu, or Rashi says, or he can nullify his intention to trim it. The kaimelan, again, because we've established kol hakelim yordin lidei tumasan b'machshava. All kelim, they are able to be makabel tuma. They get that status through intention. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, ein ton kibus, one only has to wash the area of the garment where the blood is. The Gemara says, minohani mili, from where do we know this? The Tanu Rabbanon, because the rabbis taught, yochol nitaz al mixas beged, one might think that if it's sprayed on just part of the garment, yehei kol ha-beged ton kibus, that the entire garment needs to be washed. Talmud lomar asher yaza, the pasuk says asher yaza lo amarti loch elomokum dam bilvad. This halach is only the actual area of the blood. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Davar shehu roy l'kabel tuma, something that is fit to be makabel tuma. And the Gemara notes, Stama, this unattributed part of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. It follows Rabbi Yehuda that again, it just has to be fit to be makabel tuma. It doesn't actually have to be makabel tuma. And then the Mishnah said, roy l'kibus, it has to be something that is fit to be washed, to be laundered. L'mu'ute kli, that comes to exclude a vessel. Devar greidahu, because a vessel, you would scrape the blood off, you wouldn't wash the blood off. Rashi explains, Devar greidahu, de'in mechabzimo so elagardo. Again, it's not something that you wash, it is something that you scrape. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Echad ha-beged ve'echad ha-sak, whether it's beged, meaning whether it's wool or linen, or whether it's sak, which is sackcloth, or whether it's hide, all of those things, if the blood gets on them, so then they have to be washed. And the Gemara says, Lameimer, does the Mishnah mean to say, De'or bar kibusu, that hide, that leather is something that is washed, or a minu, but we have the following contradiction. This is a Mishnah in Mesechet Shabbos, Haisa olav l'shleshes, let's say there's some bird droppings on the cushion, so you're not allowed to wash something on Shabbos, so mekancha b'samartot, so you take a rag, a dry rag, and you can wipe it off on Shabbos, but you can't use water. Haisa shel or, if it's made out of hide, so then already you can use water. No sin olam mayim, you're allowed to put water on there until you're able to remove it, and the idea is, It seems to be that by or, if you wash it, it's not bar kibus, it's not something that's normally washed, and therefore there's no problem to do this on Shabbos. It seems to contradict what our Mishnah says. And Rashi explains, Haisa olav lashleshes, if there's bird droppings on it, b'Mesechet Shabbos, Tananla, this is a Mishnah Mesechet Shabbos, Haisa al hakar shel beged, let's say you have this cushion of beged, giul shel rok, or shel tzoa, you have some kind of spit, or you have some kind of excrement, so mekancho b'samartzot b'Shabbos, you're allowed to wipe it with a rag on Shabbos, a dry rag, ve'eno nosen olam mayim lechalos al havir, you can't put on water in order to clean it, mipnei shu mechabis, because that would be mechabis, that would be laundering, ve'chibos av melacha, and kibos is an av melacha, so that's prohibited. Hainu melabin, it's included in the category of melabin. Let's say these bird droppings are on a cushion that's made out of hide, so nosin olam mayim, you're allowed to put on water, and through the rinsing of the water it will go away. And Rashi notes, but to rub it with the hands in addition to the water, that already would be problematic. Now from the fact that it says that water can be placed upon it, so we see from the Mishnah in Mesechet Shabbos that or is not something that is generally washed, and so that's a contradiction between the Mishnah in Mesechet Shabbos and our Mishnah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaye says, Lokash, it's not difficult. HaRabbanon ha'acherim, this issue actually is a machlokas between the Rabbanon and the Acherim, as we will see in the following Brisa. Titania, as we learned in a Brisa, Habeged v'hasak, when it comes to the garment and sackcloth, mechavso, so then he washes it. Now Rashi says, mechavso gabe dam chatas koi. This Brisa is talking about the same issue of our Mishnah. It's talking about the blood of a chatas gets on, so then you're supposed to do kibbutz, you're supposed to launder it. Hakli v'ha'or, when it comes to a vessel, or let's say hide, megaro, so then you scrape it off. You don't wash it, you scrape it off. So therefore the Tanakama seems to be saying that that hide is something that is generally not washed. That is consistent with the Mishnah Mesechet Shabbos, the Tanakama. And Acherim say, others say, habeged v'hasak v'or, when it comes to beged and sak and or, mechabso, so then you launder it, meaning or is something, hide is something that should be washed. That's consistent with our Mishnah, that would be the Acherim. V'hakli megaro, when it comes to a kli, when it comes to a vessel, so that you scrape off. And so essentially, again, the Mishnah Mesechet Shabbos follows the Tanakama of this Brisa, and our Mishnah follow the Acherim. Our Mishnah says that or is something which is bar kibus, which is able to be laundered. And the Gemara continues, Keman Ozla Hadamar Rav Chia Barashi. Who does the following statement of Rav Chia Barashi, who does it go like? Rav Chia Barashi says, Zimnin Sagin Havakoimna Kame Rav. Many times I was standing before Rav, and I would wash his shoes with water. The shoes were made out of leather, they were made out of hide, and he would wash them on Shabbos with water. It seems to be that it's lav bar kibus, and so the Gemara says, Keman Karabbanan. This statement seems to be going like the Rabbanan, because this statement is assuming that or is not bar kibus. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Umi'iko lamanda Amar or lav bar kibus, who does anyone really say that hide is not something that is generally washed, meaning the interpretation we're giving in accordance with the Rabbanan, we're saying the Rabbanan say that or is lav bar kibus, and we're also saying that the Mishnah in Mesechet Shabbos holds that or is lav bar kibus. Does anyone really say that? V'aksib, but it's written in the pasuk, V'habeged o hashasi o ha'erev, o kol kali ha'or, it mentions in the pasuk or, asher techab, which is going to be washed. It seems to be using the word kibus by or in the pasuk. And Rashi explains, Kra Gabi Negoim, this is by Negoim, it's by Tsaras, Techsiv Kibus Ba'or. It says over here the idea of laundering, of washing, and it's talking about or. So it seems from the pasuk already that when it comes to or, when it comes to hide, it is bar kibus. And so the Gemara instead says, Elamar Rava, rather Rava says, Kra Umasnisin Berachin. Really, the pasuk and our Mishnah is talking about soft or, when it's hide that is soft. So there actually everybody agrees that it is bar kibus, and Kipligi Bekashin. And when we saw the machlokas in the Brisa, when it said again in the Brisa that habeged v'hasak mechabso and hakliva or megarero, according to the Tanakama, that the Tanakama holds that or is lav bar kibus, and therefore you scrape it by dam chatos, and the acherim they say or mechabso, that it is bar kibus. So again, that's going to be bekashin. That's going to be talking about bekashin when it's hard or, when it is hard leather, hard hide. In such a situation, we do have a machlokas tanoim whether it is bar kibus or not. And the Gemara continues, Vamar V'kamar Rav Chia, but didn't Rav Chia say, Zimnin Sagin Hava Koimna Kame Derav? Many times I was standing before Rav, V'shachshichi Lei Misani V'maya, and again he washed the shoes which were made out of hide. He washed them with water. And now we're saying that everybody agrees when it comes to soft ore, everybody agrees it is bar kibus. That should be problematic on Shabbos. And the Gemara answers for that, because well, that statement was actually talking about ore that was hard, and therefore it was following the opinion of the Rabbanon that it's lav bar kibus, and that's why it was permitted. But the Gemara continues and says, Hadar Amar Rava, then Rava retracted and he said, Lav mil sehid the Amri, what I said is not true. Neku nemo leila kra, we're going to get up and tell the pasuk, the ksivon, berachin ksivon, that the pasuk that we just quoted above, habeged o hashasi o ha'erev o kol kli ha'or asher tachabes, which is the pasuk by Tsaras, are we going to say that's only talking about ore that is soft? Does that make sense? Milo askinon bechliach solgia haboy mimedinas hayom, isn't the pasuk also talking about hard kinds of ore which come from overseas? You can't restrict the pasuk, limit the pasuk just to be talking about rachin. V'kamer rachmon, and yet the pasuk is saying niboy kibus, that kibus washing is required. You see that the pasuk is talking even when it comes to ore which is hard. And so the Gemara says, Ela Amar Rava, rather Rava says, Tsaras, the pasuk which is talking about Tsaras, kevan demigufe kaparcha, since that's coming from the garment itself, it loosens it and it makes it rach and makes it soft, and that's what the pasuk is discussing, and therefore we can explain the pasuk in that fashion. And as Rashi explains, rach, again it makes it soft, hilkach krodet saras, therefore the pasuk by saras, afilo bekashin, could be talking even by hard leather, because it becomes soft through the saras, umasnisin barachin, and again our Mishnah is talking about soft, uplugsa bekashin, and the machlokas tanoim is by hard leather. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava, Rava says, Hikashali, hakashali, if anything is difficult to me, the following is difficult to me, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Dalid Amid Beis.